Hey everyone, my name is McKenna, also known as Sylphic Studios, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today I am back with another custom doll. But this time it's a teensy bit different because I've actually made this character 2 different times before. Granted, one of them was whenever I first started customizing and she wasn't the greatest, so she doesn't necessarily count. But ever since I made my Alice doll a couple months ago, I've gotten a lot of questions asking if I'm selling her, and unfortunately I'm not. She is mine. Both her and my first Hysteria Alice doll mean a lot to me, so I could absolutely not part with them. So just like how I remade my Hysteria Alice doll a couple weeks ago, I am remaking my Blue Dress Alice. And since I already have a full-length video on how I made my Blue Dress Alice that I posted a couple months ago, I'm not going to go into too much detail here with how I made her. I'm rather going to talk about the differences between the 3 dolls that I've made over time, and how much each one of them differs. So if you're interested in all of the details, I recommend you check out my other video. I'll link it in the description below. So without further ado, let's get into the first step of the process, which is prepping. So currently, whenever I make any Alice doll, I like to combine Spectra and Twyla, specifically Spectra's head and Twyla's body, just because I feel like it gives Alice the most. But honestly, ever since Cupid came out, I have been eyeing her sculpt and wanting to make an Alice with her, so maybe next time I make one, I will use Cupid instead, we'll see. But as for the first doll that I ever made of Alice, I used Ghoulia for her. And I remember at the time not being a big fan of the facial sculpt for her. I just felt like it looked nothing like her. But back when I made her in January of 2024, I remember that being really the only option I had. So I made do with it and just took notes that next time I made an Alice doll, I would use someone else. And currently that facial sculpt is Spectra because I just think she's so beautiful and I love her cheekbones. But maybe soon I'll switch to Cupid, we'll see. But as far as the whole prepping process and how that differs between all of the dolls, it's pretty much the same. I still use the same kettle to heat up my water and everything, and the same pliers. So I guess you can say the only thing that's really changed over time is my technique, but it's pretty much the same thing. I'm just scraping the inside of the head, let's be real. I did want to say though, when it comes to cutting all of the hair off to begin with, I remember with Ghoulia, I didn't put her hair up and kind of hacked at it from wherever I felt was fitting, and it made it a lot harder to get all the hair out, because I had to go back in and shorten up the stubble a lot. And it was also super messy, hair just went everywhere. So now whenever I hack at my doll's hair with scissors, I make sure to put their hair up with an elastic, just because it makes it a lot cleaner, and I can keep the hair later if I want to for a different reroot. When it comes to painting scalps, currently I paint all the way up to the hairline. I used to only paint over where the old paint was, where the purple was, I would only paint there. But I noticed that led to a lot of unnecessary bald spots, so I started painting all the way up to the hairline, and that solved that problem. So that's definitely something I've learned over the past year and a half to make my life a little bit easier. But now that her scalp is all painted, let's get into the actual rerooting process. So for all 3 of my dolls, I used nylon hair from Shimmerlocks in the color Nylon. This stuff is my tried and true black hair, I love it so much. And honestly, between dolls the rerooting process doesn't change too much. I just remember my first Alice reroot taking such a long time, even longer than normal. And that was because it was one of my first reroots, so I was just learning still. Because honestly, for me personally, rerooting took me a little bit to actually get the hang of. How much hair to pick up, how to not waste all of my hair, how much tension I needed on the hair to keep it in the needle, all of these different factors. But now that I have the hang of it, it's second nature to me now. I've been rerooting for a year and a half now, so I'd hope at this point it's a little bit easier. But if you're someone that's new to customizing and rerooting is pretty daunting to you or pretty hard, don't worry, we've literally all been there, you'll get it after a while. But now that all of her hair is actually rerooted, it's time to glue it in there, and I always use Fabri-Tac. That's the glue I always saw everyone else using, so that's what I use too. And I'm just putting a lot in there just to make sure that none of the hair ever gets pulled out. And I'm of course taking my little Q-tip afterwards and putting it on all of the hair. So now that that's done, let's get into the next part, which is the body repaint. So ever since I started making my custom dolls, I've been trying to perfect how I do my body repaints. And I think my technique is getting there. I'm still altering things a lot of the time. Mainly just trying out different finishes and different water to paint ratios. But when I first started, a lot of people recommended airbrushing, so that's what I did for my first Alice doll, and let me tell you, that thing is such a pain in the ass. If you've never worked with an airbrush before, consider yourself lucky. If you like airbrushes, I am so jealous of you. I wish I was you, because they can give the most beautiful finish and effects, but I just cannot handle those things. I got an airbrush and I used it on my Alice doll, and as you can see, I was able to get it to work for the entire thing. But that was at the cost of my sanity, basically, because airbrushes are such a pain in the ass to clean. Not only are they a pain in the ass to learn how to use, but cleaning these things are so hard. You have to make sure that you get every little single piece of paint, or else it will clog up indefinitely and it will not want to work ever. So after this one experience, I decided to opt for learning how to paint my dolls by hand, and ever since then I've been slowly perfecting my technique. So I guess we can thank the trauma of the airbrush for that. But as for the finish for Alice's skin on my first ever doll, it's not the worst. I will say the paint does kind of scratch off a little bit, but that's because I didn't properly seal it. I only sealed her skin with MSC afterward, which was not a good idea, because that alone is not strong enough to keep the paint from chipping or scratching. So now to seal in my dolls, I make sure to paint them with at least one coat of watered down Mod Podge. I'm still figuring out which finish of Mod Podge is better, honestly, because I used to use matte Mod Podge, but I started noticing that whenever I'd paint it on, I'd get weird texture issues and it wasn't as smooth as I wanted sometimes. So for my most recent Alice for this video, actually, I tried out glossy Mod Podge, and I feel like the finish is a lot prettier. It doesn't give me the same streaky issue, and I feel like it's also a lot more forgiving. And luckily the glossy finish doesn't even matter because I sprayed them with MSC anyway, so it just mattifies it. So going forward, I'm going to continue doing that technique on my dolls to see if it is a lot better. And when I figure that out, I will make an updated skin repaint tutorial because that is almost a year old now, so I want to make sure I keep that one up to date. I did a lot of the other coats off camera, and here's me doing another one, but here is me also spilling all of my paint all over my desk. The lid was stuck by some dried paint right there, and it just spilled everywhere. So of course I did what every smart person would do and sit there for a second, and then decided to just leave it there. Because I mean, it's on a paper towel anyway, it's gonna soak it up. And by the time I was done, it honestly soaked it up a lot and it was a lot easier to clean up, so I think that was the move. But here is me just painting her very lightly right next to the big pool of paint. And then this is her finished body repaint. I think that it looks super smooth, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So now let's get into her face, because we can't only do her body, we also have to do her face. So here is me just painting my watered down acrylic paint all over her face. Oh, and I forgot to say, for all of my dolls, I used the color Peach from Apple Barrel in the satin finish. For my past two dolls, I did lighten it up a little bit to match Alice's skin tone better, because I feel like the original paint color is a little bit too warm. But now that her face is all repainted, she is ready for her face up. So as you can see, over the past year and a half, my style has developed a lot, and I guess you could say that I've improved on my technique, because my first Alice doll wasn't looking too hot. But honestly, for being one of my earliest customs, she ain't that bad. Like, she kind of slays. She just has a lot of crusty lashes and whatever these things are. But overall, she's kind of cute. Like, she has a little bit of a charm to her, I think. But even though she isn't my best work, I still think it's super cool to be able to look back at your old work and like pick it apart a little bit, because that just means that you've grown. And even though I have remade the same doll 3 times, I haven't gotten bored, because every time I feel like she's looked different and I've had a different experience every time, because each time I've been at different parts of my doll artist journey. Like, for example, when I made my first one, I pretty much had no idea what I was doing with every single step. Like that dress, I honestly have no idea how it's still staying together. And those shoes up close, girl, they do not look very good. But with this Alice, she has like a full hand-sewn quality dress and socks and all of that stuff, and 3D printed accessories. So it's just super cool to see how I was able to put it together a year and a half ago compared to now with all of the skills that I've learned. Because trust me guys, that old dress and that apron, not very good. I'm pretty sure both things were made entirely out of glue. I'm not sure if there's a single stitch in those pieces, but you know what, you learn one way or the other, and now I am hand sewing full garments. So I'd say I've come a long way. And I just now noticed that I've been yapping about her outfit during the face up portion of the video, so I apologize. If you can't already tell, I don't really script my videos, I just kind of talk, because if I were to read off of a script, I would sound like a robot. So I'm sorry if I ever get off topic. But anyway, with these face-ups, even between this newest one and my other Alice I made a couple months ago, there is a stark difference in how her face-up looks. A couple of months ago, I was using primarily paint for all of my face-ups, but recently I got these really good colored pencils. They're the Derwent watercolor pencils. These things are so good. So currently, I've been doing all my face-ups primarily with pencils. I used to use mostly paint, and it was really difficult for me to get really small lines, like super small detail lines, especially when it comes to her eyeliner and her eyelashes. So I find that using colored pencils makes that process a lot easier because it's just a lot more forgiving. And it's just a lot easier to make sure your colored pencil is sharpened instead of making sure that your paint isn't going to blob out, if that makes sense. So I'd say literally the primary difference between this doll and the doll I made a couple months ago is just the face up and how I do them now. I pretty much made the dress the exact same, the shoes the exact same, just with some added details and better quality now that I've made the same dress like 50,000 times between my other Alice dolls. So after her face up was done, this is what she was looking like. I'd say out of the 3 face ups, this one is definitely my favorite. I just feel like it looks the cleanest, and I love the eyeshadow I was able to achieve on this one. So with her face up all done, it's time to finally get into her outfit, starting with her socks. So for Alice's socks, currently I use this fabric that me and my mom actually sublimate the design for, and I've used this fabric for all of my Alice dolls except for my first one. As you can see, that is clearly not the same fabric. That is actually non-stretch white polyester fabric that I painted black stripes on, if you couldn't tell. And because they're so ill-fitting, they're actually safety pinned in the back. So I'd say those socks compared to these socks are definitely a big improvement, because now I actually use stretch fabric and I know how to make actual socks. Good job, McKenna. My number 1 tip if you're gonna make socks, use stretch fabric, please. It will make your life 50 times easier, I promise. So now that her socks are done, it's time to get into the next part, which is her dress. So for all of the Alices I've ever made besides my first one, this is the pattern that I've always used for her dress. It's this dress pattern from Delightful. It is perfect. So not much differs between them besides just my technique and skill after making so many of them. But for my first dress, I honestly cannot remember for the life of me how I made it. Like, I don't remember what the pattern is or where the pattern came from. All I remember is that I'm pretty sure everything is glued together, which isn't very durable, but honestly she's still standing there strong after a year and a half, so it's working still. But of course for this Alice dress it is fully hand sewn, and so was the dress for my second Alice in this video. The middle Alice, if you will. I prefer to hand sew all of my pieces. I do have a sewing machine, it's just in another room because I don't have enough room for it on my desk right now. So I hand sew everything, and I only use glue when I absolutely need to, or like for minimal things like for attaching the lace at the bottom of the dress. So this is objectively a lot higher quality of a garment compared to my first dress. And even the fabric is higher quality, like this dress is made out of a thrifted t-shirt that is super soft. And then the first dress was made out of some stiff polyester fabric. So I feel like that in itself gives the dresses 2 different looks. And I'm honestly really proud of how my sewing skills have improved. But next up, let's get into her apron. So for her apron, again, I do not remember for the life of me what I did for the pattern for the first one. I think I kind of just eyeballed it and then cut everything out and glued it together, honestly. For my current aprons, I use this pattern that I made myself. I have altered it over time, but generally for all my Alice dolls besides my first one, it's the same pattern that I've used for every single one. And it's my old reliable, I love it so much. But when it comes to the fabric choices between the aprons, like I said, the first one was just made out of some polyester fabric. But now I use this like thicker dish towel, like washcloth fabric. I don't know what it is really. It's some extra fabric from a blank that my mom gave me. But I feel like the texture of this fabric really gives like apron vibes, so I use it for all of them and I love how it turns out on every single doll that I make. So I think until I find a better fabric, I'm going to continue using this one because I honestly love how it looks. And then for the blood splatter on the apron, for my first doll, I believe I just used one shade of red and kind of just went in with the paintbrush like this. I'm pretty sure it was the same general idea. I don't see this differing very much between dolls. Oh, I also forgot to mention for the pocket symbols for my last 2 dolls, I used fabric iron-on vinyl, but for my first one, I just painted it on because I didn't have access to that yet. But now that her apron's done, let's get into her shoes. If you couldn't tell, for all my Alice dolls, I've used the same exact pair of shoes, even for my first one. And these are Skulltimate Secrets Neon Frights Draculaura's boots. And in my opinion, out of all of the shoe options that we have and have gotten over the years, these are and have been the best option for Alice's boots. Like, I genuinely feel like they're perfect. They have the same buckles, they have the same like knee-highness, you know what I mean? So these are my tried and true shoes. I love them so much. For my first doll though, I didn't have these little buckles yet that I attached to the shoes. So that's a pretty big detail that's missing, but for my recent dolls, I love using these buckles to add extra detail because I really feel like these give them the Alice vibe. But now that her entire outfit is done, it's time to get into the fun part, which is her accessories. So for my Alice dolls, I love to give them every single accessory that I possibly can, and that of course includes her weapons. And last October, I got myself a 3D printer, so I'm able to 3D print these weapons. So for my first doll, since I didn't have this yet, I did sculpt her a knife. It doesn't look the best, but it gets the job done. But now that I have access to the big boy printer, it's time to print all of her little weapons. So for this doll, I printed her a hobby horse and a vorpal blade. I wanted to print her a pepper grinder and the clockwork bomb as well, but I couldn't find any files for those. So hopefully I can find those soon, because I think it would be so sick if I could have an Alice doll with like an array of her weapons. But for now, I think a hobby horse and a vorpal blade is still pretty cool. And I could only find a clear file for like her level 3 hobby horse, which I believe is this one right here. So hopefully in the future I can find files for all of her different horses, because I think it'd be so cool to have like her first one and her last one. I love the last evolution and the cutesy little first one. But anyway, this is what her hobby horse was looking like after it was all painted. I loved how it turned out. And now we're on to painting the skull for her back and then her vorpal blade. For this doll, I also 3D printed her the Omega necklace charm as well, but I did that off camera just because it was super tiny. And since I didn't have access to a 3D printer yet when I made my first doll, I actually sculpted her Omega symbol just like I sculpted her knife. And it's honestly pretty cute. I tried my best. It doesn't look the best, but I tried my best. And then for my middle Alice, I cut out the Omega symbol out of acrylic because I didn't have access to my printer at the time. I was having issues with it. So all 3 of them actually have different necklace charms. So now that all of the accessories are done, let's get into the final part, which is the stand. So this is actually the first stand that I made for all of them out of the 3, so there isn't really anything to go off of here in terms of comparison. So I guess I'll just explain my stand process to you guys. So this is a stand that my mom and I laser cut out of wood, and it's a saddle stand type because Alice has the skull on her back and it makes it really hard for the back clip stands to actually clip onto her. So unfortunately, coochie grabber stand it is. And for the color, I decided to paint it green and to kind of give it like a grass-like texture because I wanted it to give Veil of Tears, if that makes sense. I wanted her to feel like she was standing on the grass in the Veil of Tears, because that is like the primary starting point where she is wearing the blue dress. And I think that it honestly looks really good. I love how it looks with her eyes. I think that it really makes her eyes pop. So I just painted on a lot of different shades of green to give that grassy effect. This is what that texture was looking like. I think it looks pretty nice. And then off camera I painted everything else with black just to give it a nice seamless look. And as a finishing touch, I just added 4 of these little rubber bumpers just to protect the stand and whatever surface it's on. Oh, and I forgot to mention I sealed the stand and all of the paint with Mod Podge. So now that the stand is complete and all of her pieces were done, let's take a little overview at all of her clothing. I'm so proud of each and every single one of these clothing pieces. I think they turned out super cute. And I can't wait to see what she looks like in them. So without further ado, let's get her dressed up for her reveal photos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this different type of video. I really wanted to like talk about something different and kind of create a different type of video since I did make the same exact doll a couple months ago. So I hope that if you're interested in learning how I actually made her in full detail, that you go check out the other video. I just didn't want to remake the same video twice essentially and give you guys the same content. So let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this type of video and if you'd want to see more like it in the future. Before I get into my outro and all that fun stuff though, I did just want to let you guys know that this doll will be going up for sale soon. She'll be going up on Monday, July 7th at 12 p.m. MST, and I'll be selling her for $370 on my website, but $470 on my Etsy. I did just make this Etsy recently, so it is pretty new. I'll just be listing my upcoming shop dolls on there whenever I do drop them. It's just so that more people can get their eyes on my art. They'll always be more expensive over on my Etsy because of Etsy's fees and all of that stuff, so if you're ever interested in purchasing a doll from me, I recommend purchasing it on my website just to save you some money. So she will be up for sale on my website for $370 on July 7th at 12 p.m. MST, and on Etsy she'll be $470. And I also just wanted to say thank you so much to whoever purchased my Hysteria Alice doll. It genuinely means the world to me. Thank you so much for supporting me, and if it was you who purchased her, please tag me in a post or something. I would love to see her in your collection. But anyway, that's enough yapping. Let's get into the outro of the video. If you'd like some cool extra benefits or maybe some discounts on future shop or commission dolls, I highly recommend checking me out over on my Patreon. I do have a free tier now if you guys are interested in some behind the scenes content and some extra stuff. The link will be in the description, and as always, thank you to my patrons over there. Pumpkin Tushy, Morgan, Samuel, and Daisy, thank you all so much for supporting me. I love you all so much. Next week's video should be a super fun restyle, and I am really excited to show her to you guys. I am in love with how she's turning out so far. So keep a lookout for next week's video if you're interested in that. But as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys are having a good morning, afternoon, night, whatever it is, wherever you are. And I'll see you guys in next week's video.